Couple last kind of exiting questions. The perception of trying to eradicate violence, racial profiling, um, the whole ideal of just trying to, if you will, eliminate those forces from the planet Earth is not realistic. What do you do? And since you've been here for 6 years on the Louisville Metro Police Department as chief, what do you try to instill into young recruits and also officers that have been seasoned officers and officers who have just been on the job or been connected to the police department for the last 3 or 4 or 5 years? What is your message to officers within the department to let them know that you won't tolerate that kind of behavior out of anyone, regardless of their years of service or their connection to the police department in regards to more or less that there was a level of a so-called mentality
Absolutely.
that you came in to clean up, and you're trying to reassure young people that you can't be the save-all, but you are a voice that is not tolerant of that kind of behavior.
Right. And I like to think one of the things that's very important to the community, to our young people, and to our officers is that our department is transparent. And by that, what I mean is we have nothing to hide. When an officer is right, I don't have a problem saying an officer is right. But when an officer is wrong, I don't have a problem publicly saying an officer is wrong. And I will tell you that there are consequences for your actions. So when our officers go out and do something wrong, there is a consequence for them doing something wrong. There's a price that they have to pay. That doesn't mean they're going to get fired or go to jail necessarily. But if it requires that, I have to have the courage to do that. And when they're right, and even though it's controversial when they're right, I have to have the courage to stand up behind them. But where we need to go and where we're trying to go, and where I think it's going to help us as a police department, as a community, is change, philosophically change what we use to gauge how the community perceives us. As you well recall, prior to me getting here, and even being here a while, there have been some shootings of young African American males by white officers prior to me getting here, which has been the cause for great concern in our community, demonstrations and everything else. And some of those shootings were justified, and some of them were questionable. But in the eyes of many in this community, and not just the African American community, they will say, and those officers, many of those officers were vindicated in court, found not guilty. So people started questioning themselves, well, that really looked like a very bad shooting. How did that person become not guilty? How did the police officer get away? Here we go again. We got police officers out here killing people and they're getting away. Well, they got away, to use the word got away, because there was not probable cause to convict them. And they were justified in their actions. But the question was, were those actions necessary? And that is where we run into an issue, and that's where we're trying to go as a police department. I can't tell you the number of times that I or other police officers could have shot somebody, and we would have been justified. But I ask myself, is it really necessary? Do I have to resolve this issue, even though legally I can shoot you to resolve it, but is it necessary to shoot you? I mean, can I tase you instead, or can I even talk you out of this situation? And what has happened in our community, because when those officers go into the court system and they articulate that they felt that their life or somebody else's life was in some kind of danger, and it resulted in them having to use deadly force, they're going to be legally and rightfully, they're going to be exonerated. But then again, you can't help but to ask the question, and what this community has been asking, and what I even ask sometimes, by law, you were legal, but was it necessary? So what I try to teach new recruits, and even the officers that have been here, I want you to change your decision-making process. Forget about the legality, because if you work on a level of necessity, which includes legality, you will always be covered, and the community will accept that. And I'm hoping I kind of didn't complicate that.
No, you did.
Because sometimes we make decisions, and I say, okay, now I can I can beat you up because you assaulted me, and I know that I'm not going to get disciplined and everything else. But then, what I need to ask myself is it necessary to have to hit you? Is it absolutely necessary? Can I resolve this issue another way? And that's what we're trying to teach our officers. We want you to resolve issues based on the need of necessity versus the need of legality. And if you operate on the need of necessity, that automatically includes legality.
Wow.
And that really changes the culture of how we police.
Right.